Hello, my name is Nick Park. I'm the Executive Director of Evangelical Alliance Ireland, and this is our weekly message entitled It's Friday, but Sunday's Coming. As Christians, we are called to live in the world, but not to be of the world. Sometimes as Christians, we get that back to front. We try to withdraw from the world and live within our own little Christian bubble. And sometimes we become so worldly that you could actually say of Christians, we are not in the world, but we are of the world. But Jesus said we are to live in this world, but we are not to be of the world. We are going to be different from the world round about us. And that's true today, and it's always been true throughout the church's existence. That many of the passages in the New Testament that deal with social issues deal with them because Christians had a different morality from the people that lived around them in the Roman Empire. Christians were not trying to force their morality upon non-Christians, but they were saying we believe in holiness, and this is the distinctive morality that we will live by in order to please God. Now, today, one of the real flashpoints where Christian morality differs from what the commonly accepted morality around us is in regard to homosexual acts. And today, most people living around us would see nothing wrong with that. As Christians, we believe this is not part of Christian morality. Now, that should not in itself create a problem. You know, there's lots of religions have views on what's right or wrong, what is sinful or not sinful, that differ from society around them. I remember ministering in the state of Utah in the United States, and the church where I was ministering, one of their primary outreaches was a coffee shop. They did great espresso coffees, and because coffee was forbidden in the majority religion round about them, which of course was Mormonism, they had many disaffected Mormon youth would flock to the church, and they were drawn in initially by the thrill of being able to drink coffee. And of course, you have Jews that won't eat bacon. Muslims have restrictions about what they can and cannot do. And as Christians, sometimes the standards that we live by will differ from the surrounding society around us. So now that, as I say, should not create a problem. Sometimes Christians do get hateful about it. Sometimes Christians try to force their standards on everybody else. But most of us recognize we cannot do that, and we don't want to do that. For example, most of us, I believe, we hold to the principle of freedom of religion. Now, we have Hindus living round about us, and they would worship with worshipping idols. Now, we believe worshipping idols is sinful, but we don't try to get laws passed against it to prevent Hindus meeting for worship in Ireland. But we say, as Christians, we are not going to engage in idolatry because we see it as being sinful. And there's no reason why, when it comes to the subject of homosexual behavior, that we shouldn't be able to do the same thing. Now, sometimes, as I say, Christians do get hateful. I remember on one time I was asked to appear on a program by the BBC, and it was because of an issue where a Christian business had refused to provide a service for a gay customer, and would I go on and speak about the Christians' rights to practice their faith? The problem was, when I actually looked a bit closer at the situation, the Christian business in question had actually behaved like jerks. They had behaved in quite a terrible way and really rudely and offensively to this person. And I was not going to defend that. I will defend people's religious liberty, but I'm not going to defend them being able to behave like jerks when they want to. However, there is a movement going on right now that would attempt to attack Christians for simply holding to biblical standards of morality and truth. Now, EAI, Evangelical Alliance Ireland, is part of a network of evangelical alliances in most countries in the world. So there is a European Evangelical Alliance and there is a World Evangelical Alliance. And we belong to both those bodies. And the European Evangelical Alliance has a very strong emphasis on freedom of religious belief. and I've attended a number of conferences with the European Evangelical Alliance on these subjects. And in fact, stand up for freedom of religious belief, not just for evangelical Christians, not just for Christians, but for Jehovah's Witnesses and Muslim minorities and all kinds of people, because we believe that freedom of religious belief is something that is important for everybody. It's a basic human right. Now, the EEA, the European Evangelical Alliance, is now highlighting a case of a lady in Finland who is facing prosecution and potentially 2 years in prison. Now, she's not somebody trying to be a jerk. She's not somebody trying to offend or trying to spread hatred against anybody. Her name is Päivi Räsänen, and she's a Finnish MP. She was the leader of the Social Democrat Party in Finland. She was one time the Minister of the Interior in Finland. She's a medical doctor. She's also married to a Lutheran pastor, and her husband is also, I understand, the principal of a Bible seminary as well. Now, in 2004, Päivi contributed to a pamphlet on sexual ethics and marriage, in which she stated the common Christian belief, one that I hold to very firmly, is that the correct expression for sexual behavior is within marriage, and that marriage is between one man and one woman for one lifetime in the sight of one God. That's hardly controversial that a Christian would write a pamphlet which states Christian beliefs on sexuality. And then in 2019, Päivi Räsänen also tweeted. Now, the context behind the tweet was she was not trying to infringe on anybody's equality or human rights. She's actually been quite a powerful advocate for the equality and dignity of all people, including LGBT people. But what happened was that Päivi was dealing with a situation where the Lutheran Church had become an official sponsor of the Pride Parade. And she said, look, this is not on because, we're supposed to be a church. And the church should be adhering to biblical standards of morality. And she quoted a Bible verse in her tweet, which was addressing this issue about what a church should or should not be supporting. And for that, she is being prosecuted. Now, the Finnish government initially asked the police to investigate, and the police initially came back and says, we can't prosecute this woman for this because all she's done is quote the Bible. If we're going to make it illegal for people to quote the Bible, then you're going to have to start prosecuting anybody who sells a Bible, which the police were obviously a lot more sensible than the prosecutors, who have nevertheless gone ahead and brought this case against Päivi Räsänen. Now, we need to pray for Päivi. I do believe that minorities do need safeguards against hate speech, but there's no way in a million years that any reasonable person would describe what Päivi Räsänen did as hate speech. She was a Christian addressing a situation in the church that she belongs to and of which her husband is a pastor. And she was addressing that issue in the church. Now, we need, as members of churches, we need to be able to discuss controversies. We need to discuss whether the church should take a particular action or not. We need to be able to discuss our theology, our beliefs, our morality within the church. And we need to be able to use social media at times to do that. And the fact that Päivi Räsänen is facing prosecution is very serious indeed in a country within the European Union, and how that can have a knock-on effect for other European countries. And so the European Evangelical Alliance is highlighting this case. They've written to the Finnish government on Päivi's behalf, and will continue to do so. And I would simply ask you to pray for Päivi Räsänen. And pray that we as Christians will be able to always, as Päivi did, to be forthright and honest and biblical in our beliefs without being hateful to other people. But when we do so, that we would not be subjected to nonsense prosecutions of this kind. So please do pray for Päivi. Pray for this situation will be sorted out. Pray that that people will see how foolish this prosecution is, and that this will not create a precedence to try to stop Christians discussing issues within our churches in different European countries. May God bless you. You know, when we see these things happening, it causes concern. It would be easy to become pessimistic, but I refuse to be pessimistic about the situation. I believe that the church is growing in Europe, and the church will continue to increase its influence and its voice for righteousness and the prophetic voice speaking for all in our societies. Why do I believe that? Because it might be Friday, but Sunday's coming.